Okay. Battle number 5. The king of the north returns. This is at 1,290 days, measured from the middle of Daniel's 70th year. Why does he return? Daniel tells us, tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. What tidings? We don't really know. Some have wondered if it's because Gog will begin to muster his forces and prepare to come down. Others say because a massive army of Europe just got destroyed in a second. I tend to think that's why. But either way, he'll hear tidings, and then he will go with great fury to exterminate and to utterly destroy many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the sea and the mountain of holy beauty, and he shall come to his end, and there shall be none more. So here he comes back up from Egypt. And the Lord destroys him. The king of the north is no longer. So your map is getting very much more cleared up now. A few other verses. Asher shall fall by the sword. And then it says in Daniel 8, he shall be broken without hand. Jehovah of hosts hath sworn, saying, assuredly as I have thought, so it shall come to pass. As I have purposed, it shall stand, to break the Assyrian in my land. And upon my mountains will I tread him underfoot. And I will remove far off from you him that cometh from the north. And I will drive him into a land barren and desolate. His face toward the eastern sea, his rear toward the hinder sea. His stench shall come up, and his ill odor shall come up, for he hath exalted himself to do great things. I want to go into a little bit more detail here. This is really interesting. At first I thought there was almost no detail on the 1,290 days when he returns. But I started looking into it. Verse after verse kept appearing. First thing, the Lord is at the north of the land. And the Jews there have seen a great light. They're the first to be graced by the Lord's appearing. Isaiah 9 tells us it's because they were the first ones to suffer the wrath of the Assyrian. Third thing is, the king of the north returns to the land of Egypt. We're going into the details now. The faithful remnant flees Jerusalem, but they're trapped by the Mount of Olives. Just at dusk. It's the time when it's about to get dark. And you know what it says in Zechariah 14? It will become light. To me, this is the most precious thing because this is the first time that the Jews get to see the Lord up close. Just in the eventide, it will become light. And the Mount of Olives split in two, creating a valley running east to west, and will run into it all the way to Azal, reaching safety. And this is where the Lord will reveal himself to the Jews in a quiet and private way. And we're going to talk more about this later. And now the Lord will encamp around his house. I believe this is the city of Jerusalem. Cover Jerusalem with his wings, and he refuses to let the exactor pass by. We're going to watch the very details of how the Lord will destroy this wicked king of the north. He'll camp around the city of Jerusalem and refuse to let him pass the second time. The king of the north plants the tents of his palace between the Mediterranean and the mountain, Mount Zion, the mountain of his holy beauty. The king of the north is going to stand up. He's going to see the Lord and make a decision. I'm going to fight him. How crazy is that? By the sound of his voice, the Lord break the power of the king of the north in those mountains. It is not destroyed yet. He then drives the king of the north far off into a desert place with his back to the Mediterranean and his front to the sea, the forward sea. Mr. Kelly says it's the Dead Sea. So there he is. And it's in a desert place. And the Lord will consume them with fire. It kills the body and the soul. And their bodies will collapse as when a sick man thinks. Remember, 200 million will collapse. And the Lord consumes them with this fire. By morning, the vast army will be destroyed. And there are multiple places where it says this will be accomplished in one day. One place where it says, in the evening, trouble, and in the morning, they are no more. Overnight, this whole army will be destroyed. And then he will cast the king of the north into the lake of fire. And now I want to talk about something that happens between the 5th battle and the 6th battle. And that's the restoration of Israel. Are you guys okay to stick it out another 15 minutes or so? I think we can get through it. The restoration of Israel will happen in 2 phases. First, the 2 tribes will be restored, and then the 10 tribes. The 2 tribes are guilty of crucifying the Messiah, blood guiltiness, and also of breaking the law, whereas the 10 tribes were expelled from the land before the Lord came. They weren't there. And so they are not guilty of crucifying the Messiah. So just keep that in mind as we go through it. So 2 phases. So on the backside of the mountains, the Lord will reveal himself to the Jews in a quiet, intimate way, just like Joseph revealed himself to his brethren. He caused the servants to leave when he did that. And so the Lord's going to reveal himself privately. And I think this is so special. These are the ones that stayed in Jerusalem. They didn't flee to the mountains. They stayed there the whole time. And they are going to be the ones that have the privilege to run through the mountains preaching the gospel of peace. That gospel is that the Lord has come. Peace is finally arrived. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that preacheth, that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace. You know, they're going to say, these battered and hunted people are going to, when these runners come with the message that the Lord has come, they're going to be so happy that they're going to say their feet are beautiful. That's just so encouraging to me. The Lord takes care of his own. The Jewish remnant will then look upon him whom they have pierced, because they did pierce him. Nationally speaking, it was the Jews that crucified the Lord. And they're going to own their blood guiltiness. And there's a verse in Psalm 51 that has that word, deliver me from blood guiltiness, O God. And that's a confession of the Jewish remnant that they're guilty of crucifying the Messiah. That's actually David speaking of himself and killing Uriah, murdering Uriah. It's prophetic of the Jewish remnant confessing their sin of crucifying the Lord. I will pour out upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. They shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one is in bitterness for his firstborn.
John, I have a question.
Yeah.
When the remnant is running and like telling, who are they telling? Who's he left there that they would tell?
Okay, so at the middle of the week, when the statue was set up in the temple of the beast, a large group fled Jerusalem to go into those mountains where you see them running, and they're hidden there. Actually, I don't have the details in here, but Moab, and I think another one of the countries, there's going to be some of Moab that are going to hide them, just like some Christians hid Jews during the Holocaust. Very same thing is going to happen. They're going to shelter them and hide them. It says in Revelation 12, the earth will open her mouth and help the woman. We'll get to that in a week or so, and reading these. And they're going to shelter them, protect them. And those are the ones that these ones will run to and tell them the good news. And then it says in Matthew 24, then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. This is a bit confusing, but expositors say that this is speaking about all the tribes that are in here at this time. So I was really referring to the Jews, but I just wanted to throw that out there. And Isaiah 53, which we love so much, he was despised and we esteemed him not. That will be their words. They will confess. All we, like sheep, have gone astray. They will utter those words and be restored to the Lord. And then the remnant of Judah and Benjamin will weep for their brethren. This is something that's so precious. You know there's repentance when they love their own brothers, the 10 tribes. And this verse is so touching to me. Thus saith Jehovah, a voice hath been heard in Ramah, the wail of very bitter weeping. Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for her children, because they are not. This was only partially fulfilled when Herod killed all his baby boys. And it's quoted there in Matthew. The interpretation, the full fulfillment of this, is the 2 tribes weeping their hearts out because they want their own 10 tribes, the 10 scattered tribes, to be restored. And people are going to come to them and say, don't feel so bad. You guys are restored. The Messiah is here. Don't feel so bad. And they're going to refuse. And they're going to be so sad. And they're going to want their brethren to come back. But the Lord's going to comfort them and tell them, refrain thy voice from weeping and thine eyes from tears, for thy work shall be rewarded, and they shall come again from the land of the enemy. And there is hope in thine end, saith the Lord, that thy children shall come again to their own good. He promises them, your brothers, the 10 tribes, come back. That's the next thing. And some of these Jewish remnant are going to have the privilege to go to the 10 scattered tribes and tell them to return. Isaiah 6, we know this is in one sense prophetic of the Lord, but also it's of the Jewish remnant. Who shall I send? Who will go for us? The Jewish remnant will say, here am I, send me. And they will go. And if you read the rest of that chapter, it's talking about the Jewish remnant going to the 10 tribes. Okay, this is really interesting. He shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from the one extremity of the heavens to the other. This is talking now about the 10 tribes being restored. So before it was phase 1, 2 tribes get restored to the Lord. Now we're on to phase 2, the 10 tribes get restored. Okay, I want to look at some of the places that they come from. It shall come to pass in that day that I'll set his hand the second time to acquire the remnant of the people which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, or Upper Egypt, and from Cush, which is North Africa. See them coming? And from Arabia, and from Elam, or Iran, and from Shinar, which is Iraq and Syria, and from the islands of the sea, so on. And then in our Sunday school we read the place where they were put originally, and I believe that's where the Kurds are from. So we know there's going to be some that come from there. It says every nation, so I probably should have arrows everywhere. But, and here's an interesting thing. I will make all my mountains a way, and my highway shall be exalted. Behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north. Psalm 120 tells us some will come from Russia. It's a good thing they leave because Russia's about to be destroyed. And from the west, which refers to Europe. And from the land of Sinim. This is the only biblical reference to China. And here they come. All the way from the far east. Amazing. The Lord has not forgotten them. And the Lord is going to open the way in them. The tongue of the Red Sea over here is going to be dried up to make way. Just like that. I don't know how always that could happen, but... And the 7 streams of the Nile River will be dried. This will open up a clear way for them to return to the south. There's also going to be a highway cleared, briefly, just a cleared path through all the rubble from Assyria to Israel. You see that over there. In the millennium, this is going to be extended as a formal highway all the way into Egypt. And you can get that from Isaiah 19. So the Lord's going to open the way for them to return. And I think, to me, this is something that is so amazing. I read this in Jeremiah the other day, and it just struck me. They are going to put piles or signs. Is Ephraim? They're going to make signs along the highways telling the returning 10 tribes where they need to get off because they're finally home. Think of it. 2,700 years. Over 2,700 years they've been away. They don't even know who they are. The Lord's going to show them. Is he my dear son? That's the 10 tribes. Is he a pleasant child? For sins I spake against him, I do earnestly remember him still. Therefore my bowels are troubled for him. I will surely have mercy upon him, saith the Lord. Set thee up waymarks all along the way, pointing the way home. Make thee high heaps, set thine heart toward the highway, even the way which thou wentest. Turn again, O Virgin of Israel, turn again to these thy cities. They're finally going to come home. But Zion said, the Lord hath forsaken me, the Lord hath forgotten me. Can a woman forget her second child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? And sadly, it is possible for a woman to forget the baby. Yea, they may forget. Yet will I not forget thee. Behold, I have weighed thee upon the palms of my hands. Thy walls are continually before me. He remembers every day. It's going to happen very quickly. 45 days. 45 days they will return. There are going to be those who have real faith, and they're going to come broken in spirit, praising the Lord, but there's a mixed multitude. There are some that are real, and some that are false. The rebels are going to be purged out at the border of the land. They're going to be destroyed later. And they're going to own their guilt, being under the curse of his law, breaking his law, and will be restored. All Israel will be restored. It's what answers to the Day of Atonement, which is one of the feasts of Jehovah. And all Israel will be saved. The nation will seem to be born at once. A nation shall be born in one day. Ezekiel 37 is the valley of dry bones. Shall these bones live? Yes. The Holy Spirit will cause them to live and stand up on their feet. And that's the restoration of the nation of Israel. And they're going to be forged into a fearsome army that the Lord is going to use in the 7th battle. Make a new covenant with them. Romans 11:26, all Israel shall be saved. That refers to all of faith to be saved. And then the enmity, the old bitterness, the old envy between Ephraim, between the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes will be gone. There'll be one big, happy family. But we often say that in a sarcastic way, but literally they will be. And then the returned tribes of Israel will fill the land. And then it'll be bursting with people. And we'll ask the Lord, can you extend our border so that we can have room? And he will answer that in a bit. And there's a verse. The place is too narrow for me. Okay, battle number 6. We're getting right down to the end here. The second attack of the Assyrian, Gog and Magog. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, prince of Rosh, who could that be but Russia, Meshech, Moscow, and Tobolsk, those are cities in Russia. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws and will bring thee forth. Like a man with a fishing hook pulls a fish out of the sea, the Lord is going to pull Gog and Magog down from their hiding place in the north. How is he going to do it? I believe it will be because of their lust and their greed. They will see this land of Israel apparently unprotected. The Western Confederacy and the Eastern Confederacy have apparently self-destructed, and they're going to say, all of this money, what's stopping us? And they'll come down. Whoops. So here they come. And I just learned this. They will actually gather in the south of the land, in the land of Edom, come around from behind. And they'll actually be in the land of Edom, as you can see. So they're going to gather in the land of Edom. It's called the Lord's threshing floor. And after gathering their strength, they will lead an attack. Russia will be in the front of the attack, towards Jerusalem, going up like a cloud to cover the land. And then the Lord will roar out of Zion and destroy Russia specifically on those mountains. Boom. And to deal with the army, the Lord will cause a great earthquake, throw the armies into confusion, and then rain hail, fire, and brimstone upon them. The Lord will send a fire upon Magog. Now this is talking about not the army, but the the land. And a great whirlwind. Okay? And this is going to be the destruction of Gog and Magog. The winepress judgment. This is what happens right at the time when the Lord destroys Russia. It will begin here. It's mentioned in Revelation. It's mentioned in many of the prophets. We had the harvest judgment before. Now we have the winepress judgment. Very briefly. We're getting right towards the end. The other nations that came with Russia are still here in the land of Edom. The Lord will not stop after destroying Russia. He will continue his march south. The winepress begins when the Lord roars out of Zion and finishes when the last confederate of Russia is destroyed. And now many nations are assembled against thee, and that say, let her be profaned. Let her eye look upon Zion, but they know not the thoughts of Jehovah, neither understand they his counsel, for he hath gathered them together as the sheaves into the threshing floor. Arise and thresh. For the wrath of Jehovah is against all nations, and his fury against all their armies. He hath devoted them to destruction, he hath delivered them to the slaughter. And their slain shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up from their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. The sword of Jehovah is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of kidneys of rams. For Jehovah hath a sacrifice in Basra, which is the capital of Edom, and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Let the heathen be awake to come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full, for the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Okay, the Lord is now going to tread the winepress. You know what the winepress is? It's a big area where they throw all the grapes in, and then men go and they stamp on the grapes to make the juice come out. The Lord is going to take this land of Edom, fill it with all the armies of those atheistic people that hate him, and then he's going to personally go out and stamp on them until their blood will gush out. It's a terrible thing. The Lord will do it. The rebels among the 10 tribes are going to be trapped in the land of Eden in the mountains, and they're going to be part of that. That's what it means when it says the vine of the earth will be cast in. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and the blood went out of the winepress to the bits of the horses for 1,600 stadia. And that distance is 200 miles from the valley of Jehoshaphat to south of Eden. 200 miles. You will just tread that out. And then I have... This is Isaiah 63. The Jews ask the question, who is coming from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This is the Lord returning from the vintage judgment, the winepress judgment. The Lord responds, I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, thy garments like him that treadeth the wine fat? His garments are going to be soaked with the blood of the animals. I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me. For I will tread them in mine anger, and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment. The Lord will do this alone. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. I looked, and there was none to help, and I wondered that there was none to uphold. Therefore mine own arm brought salvation to me, and my fury it upheld me. He's saying, I look for some to uphold. When you're doing something that's a terrible task, it's nice to have others with you to kind of support you in that. The Lord will have nobody with him, but what will support him is his fury. And I just thought of this on the cross. What sustained him? It was his love. But in the vintage judgment, it will be his fury that will sustain him. And I tread down the people in mine anger, and make them drunk in my fury, and I bring down their strength to the earth. They're going to build a graveyard called the Hamon-Gog Graveyard. It'll take them 7 years to burn the weapons of war left from these armies. They'll build a graveyard, and it'll stop the way of the passers-by. It'll be a sightseeing kind of thing. When people come to Jerusalem to worship, they'll have the option to pull aside and look across this Hamon-Gog Graveyard. And will know what will happen if you try to rebel against the Lord. In 7 months shall the house of Israel be buried the dead. 7 months to bury the dead. It goes on to say that they're going to have to build a city and dedicate certain people to constantly be burying. They're going to have a whole system for finding dead corpses and burying them. It's really remarkable. But massive graveyard. And the location of it is just east of the sea. Okay, final battle. Alright? Just about done. Thou art my battle axe and my weapon of war. The Lord is now going to use restored Israel to do a final sweep with the armies. Edom's been judged 2 times already. Once by the king of the north, and once in the Winepress judgment. And now he's going to be judged again. The Lord will save a few from each of those countries and give Israel the privilege of being the ones to wipe them out for the last time. For with thee will I break in pieces the nations. Here it goes. They shall fly upon the shoulder of the Philistines. Boom. There go the Philistines. And they shall spoil the sons of the east. They shall lay their hand upon Edom. And there's going to be nothing left of Edom under that. There goes Edom. And Moab. And Ammon. And now, the fulfillment of these verses that speaks of their millennial blessing. They ask for the Lord to enlarge their border, and so he will. Of the Euphrates River, the river of Egypt, he will stretch their borders. This looks a little twisted because I'm using Google Earth, which is rounded. A lot of maps will see how it's more lateral, but anyways. So, just to summarize, let's remember these 7 great battles. King of the south pushes up into the land of Israel. And the king of the north will sweep down through into Egypt. And the beast will mount a counterattack. And the Lord will appear with his heavenly armies. Then the king of the north will return into Israel and be destroyed by the Lord. In the meantime, the restoration of Israel will occur. First the 2 tribes, then the 10 tribes. Then the armies of Russia and many other atheistic peoples will come down to destroy Israel. The Lord will go around Zion and destroy them. Finally, he'll lead Israel out, restore Israel, to take out the last remnants of their enemies, extend their borders to fulfill the promises made to Abraham. And that's it. So, does anyone have any questions? Or anyone awake?
Yeah. Was it the Lord or Jesus that came into the earth, and did he actually go on the earth?
So it would be the Lord Jesus Christ. He'll descend. Revelation 19, it's the Lord Jesus personally who came many years ago. We're talking about his second coming. So just as he came the first time in person, he'll come again. And he will come down here. I believe he will actually be on the earth, because he will actually have a throne in Jerusalem. So he'll literally be here. It's not some spiritual parallel picture. He literally will come personally in return.
You mentioned there about all Israel will be saved.
Yeah, so Paul there in Romans is talking about how there's a remnant of Israel according to grace. And they are those who have truly had faith. And so in a sense, when they are saved, all Israel is looked at as being saved. But it's really only those of faith that are saved. You can't respond on any more than that.
All those who enter into the millennial kingdom are only those of faith, because by then the apostates have been destroyed by the king of the north in the land, and when the 10 tribes return, the rebels are purged out. So only those who are of faith are left. So then it will come to pass, all Israel shall be saved, and none of their children will apostatize from the Lord in the home.
Anything else? Everyone ready for some supper? All right.